Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Intelligence Report podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Welch. Very excited to talk to our guest today. As you know, I'm a big fan of travel. People who travel are often guests on the podcast. Love to learn about cultures, love to visit new places, learn new languages, try new foods. And our guest today, Chris Stakich, is the perfect example who has combined his passion for travel with an amazing career doing some really exciting things. So first off, Chris, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, great to be here, Dylan. Excited to have this conversation.
So let's dive right into what we both love a lot, the travel world, the travel industry. I know you worked as a tour guide, an expedition guide. Now you are the CEO at Summit. So an amazing, huge career trajectory growth. First off, tell us a little bit about, your background, your passion, where you found this love for travel, and then how it led into this, really amazing career that you've happened to build for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated from Harvard University in 2001. And I was an economics major. I was playing football while I was at Harvard. And, I was definitely that type of person that was on this track to charge life hard and accomplish as many things as humanly possible. And by my senior year of college, I was starting to feel quite burned out, if not just confused about this next step in life. For the first time in my life, unenthused about, where things were heading. And so I decided to take a year off, sort of take a gap year post college and get out there and see other cultures, other countries. And I ended up applying to a company called Rustic Pathways. It was a high school travel company, and they hired me to open Costa Rica for the company. And so at 21 years old, I traveled down to Costa Rica with a baseball cap and a backpack on my back. And I set up 7 different programs for Rustic Pathways in Costa Rica. They would each run for 10 weeks of the summer. And that first summer, every single session was sold out. The whole summer was sold out. We had more people come to Costa Rica that summer than had ever traveled with the company in a given year. And I knew that this was something I wanted to double down on and just get deeper into that, into that world of travel.
That's amazing. You're a humble guy because I did not know that you went to Harvard or played football. So learning something new alive. And, that hopefully makes some of our listeners feel better. If you're, a Harvard football player and you still weren't sure, where you wanted to take direction, that gives a lot of hope. And, that's what's funny and interesting. And something I love about travel is, you don't need necessarily a degree or a lot of money. Sometimes you strip away everything. You go somewhere you're unfamiliar with, and it teaches you who you truly are as a human and what's most important to you. And it sounds like that's what happened in Costa Rica. Can you share, what an amazing experience also, by the way. Do you have any moments that kind of stick out to you, going from Harvard football, college education to jungle, beach, baseball cap and backpack, and saying man, what a unique, interesting transition, but what an amazing experience at the same time?
Oh yeah. So the company, we ended up developing local teams in 19 different developing countries around the world. So from Thailand to Cambodia to Vietnam to the Fiji Islands, the Dominican Republic. In each country, we'd have a local team that ran all of the programming in that country. And over the course of the next 15 years, I helped grow that organization from a very small mom and pop company into one of the larger student travel companies in the US. And I spent the first half of my time period, 7 or 8 years out in the field, visiting remote villages in developing countries, sleeping on the floor in homes, using non-flush toilets and bucket showers. And it completely transformed the way I looked at the world. Different, the way different cultures interact with one another, what's important for any human out there in the world. Just gave me so much perspective on this amazing planet we live on. And what was neat was all of these programs were designed for high school students. And so we're taking high school students from typically affluent communities in major cities across 45 different countries around the world into these 19 developing countries. And in a very similar way, in a 2-week time period, it would completely change the way that they look at the world, the assumptions they have on the world, and then start thinking through like a self-awareness lens on how they could fit and participate in what's going out there.
That's amazing. And you bring up a good point too. And I can relate to that because I grew up in upstate New York, just the most classical middle America you could imagine, or middle class America. And I didn't even really travel out of the country until I was about 21 years old. And I went to Peru for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was such a mind blowing culture shock experience in such a good way. It just showed me all these new cultures, how other people live, and it made me appreciate what I have. It made me realize how much I took for granted, and it also made me realize how much of the world there is to see. So I'm sure, helping grow that business and helping, be there, boots on the ground, not only experiencing that with locals who live there, but also sharing that experience with these young, impressionable students, that will have a ripple effect, that you probably won't even ever really know or hear about, but affected all those kids' lives, in such a positive way. So that's amazing to have that experience. How long did you work there? And then what was kind of your ultimate decision to continue further, down the line with your career? And what did you want to do next after that?
Yeah. So, it really was a good chunk of my life work. I still am extremely passionate about, the next generation of leaders out there on our planet and, how we're preparing them to step into positions of leadership. I ran the travel organization up until April or May of 2020, which was, right in the heat of COVID. There's a sort of a long story about, what was going on at that time for us as an organization, but essentially, the one thing I knew when COVID hit and planes were not leaving airports and not landing in other countries, I knew it might be some time before this picked up. So professionally, I got recruited to be the chief experience officer for YPO, or the Young Presidents Organization. I had been a part of that organization since I was 35 years old. It had played a huge part in my life as a leader and as a father and as a husband and as a son. And I felt like I owed a lot back to YPO. And so I accepted this position of chief experience officer, and I oversaw about 500 global programs a year. And then also all of our learning strategy, all of our strategic partnerships, and something that YPO calls Forum. And it was a pretty incredible experience, just over 2 years, to basically be working for an organization that's the largest organization of CEOs on the planet, and helping prepare those CEOs for, again, what they were facing in the next 5 and 10 years.
How did you go from, this Costa Rica backpacking lifestyle to then, YPO, leadership, America, CEOs? What did someone reach out to you? Were you sort of like, okay, I've done this, long enough, I'm ready to kind of try something new? Was it a combination of that? Like, what was that kind of process like for you?
Yeah, by the time COVID hit, I was the proper CEO of a fairly large student travel organization. So I'd moved much more into, what it feels like to be an executive and to run an organization and truly understand its mission and its vision, and, how you want to accomplish that mission and vision, and how to build and manage teams of people. And during that time, we as an organization did have YPO students traveling with us. We had YPO families traveling with us. I was also the learning officer for the San Francisco Bay chapter of YPO. I was running a lot of events and experiences for that chapter. And so essentially a recruiting firm that had gotten hired by YPO to fill this position, as part of their research, they came across my name and just wondered if I wanted to enter a general applicant pool for the position. And yeah, I got the position and jumped in with 2 feet and loved every day of it.
That's great. Yeah, one thing, I worked as like an expedition guide, somewhat similar actually out of college, and you meet so many people, which is so fun and so interesting. And what is also really cool about that is I call it like the tour guide effect or the guide effect, is people naturally look up to you because you're in charge, you're their leader, especially when it's in a foreign country. And it gives you, you were young and as was I, it kind of forces you to step into this leadership role because you're now in charge of these people. And same thing like that opened up a lot of experiences for me. That's great that you kind of were able to just blend these two experiences together to kind of transition from one right to the next. What's something you kind of took away from both and maybe still see in your career today, sort of the combination of this travel, stepping outside of your comfort zone, but then also working into this sort of leadership world? Like where do people in your experience pull from those two things and then apply it to their lives in your experience?
Yeah. The couple things that come to mind for me, first and foremost, is exactly what you were mentioning, which is I've always loved pushing people outside their comfort zone and helping them step into situations that makes them uncomfortable, but makes them learn about themselves. Specifically when you're in far-flung corners of the developing world, often it includes challenging people's assumptions about the world, religion, music, culture, and just, what's going on out there. The second thing, the second thread that has run through all the organizations I've been a part of and led, truly is helping people find their mode of leadership, where they're strong, where they're weak, how to develop more self-awareness in real hopes that, at the end of the day, I can participate in helping people narrow in on the things they're passionate about and what is really important to them, and then how to step into a position of leadership within that zone.
Got it. So let me ask you this, because, we haven't really touched on this too much, and I'm very excited to be a part of Summit at Sea coming up. Where did you kind of take this leadership, this knowledge, and then this travel experience and bring it ultimately into Summit? And tell us a little bit about Summit at Sea, and how, I feel like that's literally just the culmination of all of these experiences and skill sets that you've built. So tell us, how that happened, and then a little bit about the organization.
Yeah, so let me first share, my first Summit experience, which was in 2017. I was still the CEO of this travel company. I was attending a ton of business conferences, and someone said, "Hey, you should come to this Summit in LA experience." And at first, the last thing I wanted to do was attend another business conference. My friend who invited me said, this thing is totally different. Give it a shot. Come with me. You can room with me. And what I experienced just absolutely blew my mind from a programming standpoint and an experience standpoint. The day would begin with sunrise yoga with Shiva Ray and like different types of like health and wellness movement, followed by health smoothies and breathing techniques. And then the day would move into thought leadership. And I heard Kobe Bryant speak, and I heard Jeff Bezos speak, and Malcolm Gladwell speak. And, it's quite interesting. And then at the same time, I would look at the app, and there was these different activities happening throughout the day. So I remember leaving one of the talks and going to try this ice bath with this guy, Wim Hof, who taught us this breathing technique to withstand cold water for long periods of time. And then, back to the app, and it was like, Tim Ferriss is going to be recording a podcast, at this other stage in, downtown LA, and sort of racing over to see that happen. And then the meals were all these like curated collections of people where you would get a time and a location to show up in a specific table. And the Summit team had sort of like handpicked every person that was going to be at that table, and, had a little bit of like engineered serendipity to like create the right types of conversations. And I just met all these amazing people. Everyone was highly accomplished. Everyone was professionally accomplished, but they had a sense of like a spirit about them where they were fun, they were unique, they were cool, they were interesting. And that would go to that. Those dinners would go straight into music and comedy. And often, the evening was ending at 3 a.m. and starting back up at 6 a.m. And so I'd never been to anything like that. And it really had the intellectual rigor of a really high quality conference mixed with the spirit and like feeling state of a retreat, mixed with like the high pumping energy of a music show. And, to this day, I think Summit is one of a kind, and I've never experienced that combination out there.
I'm excited. You just got me even more excited. I'm going to try to connect the dots on some things really quick. So hear me out. But, obviously I love to travel. And for me personally, going to like business and work conferences, there's actually a lot of similarities. I feel like you're you're around other people with very like-minded interests. So if you're traveling, you're probably around other travelers or people who are in that industry to support you, and they're probably, friendly and welcoming for the most part. At a conference, people are there to meet, network, make new friends, find partnerships. I've had life-changing experiences traveling when you sort of get outside your comfort zone and see a problem from a new perspective. And same exact thing when I've attended conferences. I'll hear something from a speaker that just gives me an idea, or I meet someone and the synergy is just perfect that we find a way to work together and support each other. And what's really interesting is how we met. I got invited to speak at a conference called EarthX 2 years ago. I was working in the sustainability kind of consulting world, and I was extremely burnt out from it. And I got invited to go to this event, and I'm almost like, I don't want to speak. I don't want to go. I don't want to be around these people. I need a break. But I just said, you know what? Maybe going will like inspire me. So I went to this conference, and it was amazing. And it got me energized for the work I was doing. And at this conference, I met the woman who connected us, Katie. Katie is a traveler. She's a philanthropist. She has her own business. We started working together on a few different projects. And then she opened up, she spoke very highly of Summit at Sea, and then she introduced us, and here we are. So it's amazing. Like, you never know, what opportunities will come from, showing up and being there. A lot of times, you meet someone who can help you and support you. And usually you meet, people that are like-minded. And from what I'm gathering and from everything I've heard, that's Summit at Sea on steroids, basically.
Yes.
So like, I can't wait. Share. Yeah. So you were able to go and attend this experience, and you
Yeah.
loved it. That was in 2017. So what was that process like? Were you still at your previous job and you attended it, and then it kind of like transitioned into working at Summit?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, I mean, I attended the Summit LA in 2017. Similar to almost everyone that goes to a Summit experience, I met these incredible people that became lifelong friends, and so I became just interwoven into the fabric of the Summit community just through other friends that I had that were really active Summit members. And then when I was at YPO, I reached out to the CEO of Summit, and I was wanting to work with Summit to help create a Summit style event for YPO, because I just knew how much more engaging and interesting and sort of enlivening the Summit experiences were. And so while I was working through that partnership, basically the CEO of Summit reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're in the process of going through a transaction with an organization called events.com. We're going to be entering a new CEO search. Would you be interested in throwing your hat in the ring for the position of CEO and interviewing for the job?" And I absolutely jumped at it. And the reason is, although I've been part of amazing communities in the past, YPO included, and the Harvard Football Network included, my real spirit and like ethos, vibrates and resonates with the Summit community, because everybody, as I was saying, is highly accomplished in their field and industry. Everyone's climbed their first, mountain and reached that first level of success, but everyone has like a deep, deep yearning and interest in learning more around health and wellness, relationships, business, technology, spirituality. Like the people want to keep leveling up. And if you're in a community of people that are leveling up, like, you tend to do the same. And then secondly, everyone is just so fun. They are loving life. They are sort of like the YOLO crew. And if you sum it up, it will say it's a crossover between, the TED community, the Davos community, and the Burning Man community. And I think that's completely accurate. And, it is a little bit of that Burning Man spirit that I think has a carefree nature and an excitement and enthusiasm to it that really drew me into the Summit position.
Sounds like lifetime experience and opportunity right there. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what Summit does. Like, I know obviously there's actually, if you even want to share a little bit more about Summit at Sea,
Sure.
and then kind of share the bigger picture of what Summit does.
Sure. So Summit at Sea is our sort of cornerstone flagship event. It's a true rite of passage for anyone that is a Summit member, because it's iconically, we take over Richard Branson's Scarlet Lady cruise ship. So we have a whole ship to ourselves. We bring on 1,000 community members who, again, are CEOs, founders, creators, artists, musicians, pro athletes, just a wild, incredible, diverse crew of people. And we come together to learn together and to be together. We pick topics and themes that we feel are the forefront of the discussions that need to be had as we look at the next 12 months and 24 months of what's unfolding on our planet. We pull together the most interesting people that we can into those conversations. And then from an experiential standpoint, it has the same formula that I was mentioning about the LA event, where it's a mix of health and wellness, a mix of thought leadership, a mix of art and culture and music and entertainment. And it goes from, very early in the morning to very late at night. The nature of being on a cruise ship is probably the catalyst. It's a secret ingredient where, unlike a city where people can sort of drift off and, meet up with their old college roommate or, go do something else. You're on the ship with these 2,000 people for 4 days and 3 nights, and you keep, running into the same people in this reoccurring pattern and sort of deepening the conversations and connections. And especially at this, day and age where in real life experiences are decreasing and loneliness is increasing, and AI is increasing, I think it's so neat to create that type of format and container where you're like on a ship together for 4 days.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm going to Miami for a conference tonight, and I'm hit up my old roommate, and I was like, "Hey, I'll be in town. You want to hang out?" So, and
Right.
no, that makes perfect sense. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, and we're very fortunate in certain aspects. You and I live in different areas, but we're able to have this conversation online, and the content will go out and be spread online. But again, just going back to square one, like we both kind of bonded over our love for travel. It's getting
Hmm.
out away from your screen, out of the office, getting your hands dirty, meeting real people in kind of spur of the moment chances that I think are the most impactful experiences you can have on your life. I've met travel friends that I talked to for 15 minutes 10 years ago that I still interact with every day. Same thing with people I've met at work conferences. You have a 10-minute conversation and they're like, let me introduce you to someone that can, invest in your business or something like that. And that's
Yep.
amazing that this really does combine both of those. I'm sure I can only imagine, how many connections and conversations and partnerships and business ventures will come out of these 4 days, which is so crazy to really think about. So that's exciting. Do you have any moments? I love hearing like story from people. Like, do you have any moments from your experience on, Summit at Sea or another Summit experience where the stars aligned, something clicked, you met the perfect person you needed to talk to, or like an idea came to you that just got you over like a hump? Does anything kind of stand out, that catalyzed something in your life that made a big change?
Yeah, there was an experience when I was on Summit at C24 where, as I was mentioning, I sat down for dinner with a group of people I had never met before. And when we were leaving that dinner, one of them said, "Hey, there's this experience on the roof of the roof of the ship that we should really check out." So I went up there, and it was a NASA astronaut who had us all laid down looking up at the stars. And he is the person on the planet who has seen the furthest star that's ever existed through the NASA Space Telescope. So he did this like 30 minutes of spoken poetry on just the expanse of our universe and just the length of time of the universe and our planet and how that's related to like the amount of time we have on the planet and how to just take advantage of every year, every month, every day, every hour. And it was just, I don't know, it was just it's like a spiritually impactful, unexpected thing I experienced that just, it was just so cool. I remember leaving that just in like floating, just in such a good mind state where it just made me more optimistic and excited about everything I was working on and just more grateful for everything I have in my life.
Man, I mean, you mentioned, the quality of the people that are on these, and hearing, a NASA astronaut who's seen the furthest
Yeah.
star sitting you down, looking up and, walking you through that experience, can see why that can be life-changing for sure. That's amazing. This is all impromptu. We're just kind of winging it, but I'm going to do a little rapid fire
Cool.
questions for you. All right. So let's just
That's good.
see how it goes. No right or wrong answer. You can answer however you feel best. Ready?
Sure.
What's your favorite country that you've been to?
My favorite country is probably Thailand.
Thailand. And
Yeah.
real quick, why is that?
I love the people there. I love the culture. Like it is one of the kindest, most giving places I've ever been. Um, the food is absolutely amazing. When I was there in the early 2000s, you'd get a plate of, calamari for $1 and fried rice for another 50 cents. It was just an amazing culture. Um,
Okay. And next question, favorite food for a country?
my favorite food is probably I'd have to go with sushi. Traveled a bunch throughout Japan and Tokyo, and they obviously do it right there. But I've always loved fish, and getting that in an incredibly high quality spot in Tokyo is some of the best meals I've ever had.
Okay. And favorite friendliest people? I know you kind of mentioned Thailand, but are there any other countries that stick out for you?
Yeah, beyond that, I would say the local Fijians, when we would travel to remote islands in the Fiji Islands, and when you get up into like the hill tribes of the remote islands, it's everyone's just like, "Hula, welcome to my village." People just so excited and heartfelt and honest and sincere.
Are you more of a jungle, desert, ocean, or mountains type person?
Definitely more of a jungle beach type of person. Love surfing, love the rainforest, love like the jungle environment.
Costa Rica is perfect for you then.
Yep.
Nosara,
Yeah. Oh
beautiful
yeah,
place.
absolutely.
Okay, favorite book of all time.
Wow. One book that stuck with me for a long time was called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I think sometimes books come into our life at the right moment. And I was in my senior year of college at the time and read this book, and it just had a depth and like a reflective perspective in the book that just really got me thinking about the world differently. Very likely played a part in why I decided to sort of take a year off and go out and travel the world.
Have you ever had like a close call, life or death moment on your travels?
A couple times, for sure. I've had some motorbike accidents exploring, exploring the dirt roads of some of these countries, the ocean as well. A couple surfing experiences where I thought I'd gotten in over my head quite literally and might not get out of there.
Well, they do make for the best stories. So
Yep.
there you go, right there. Well, that's the wrap up of our rapid fire questions. One last question for you. Where do you see, obviously you've had an amazing journey kind of building block after block on your career. Now it sounds like, Summit and Summit at Sea are just sort of the perfect alignment of, your travel, your leadership, your business experience. Where do you see yourself going, and where do you see Summit and Summit at Sea going in the next few years?
Yeah, the number one thing I hear when I'm talking with Summit members is they just want to connect more. And so we've created Summit communities in some core cities where we have a critical mass of Summit members. So in New York, LA, San Francisco, Miami, and Austin, we're running 2 to 3 events a month in each of those cities where we have like a core event that is part of our thought leadership or arts and culture or culinary type experiences. And then we have lighter weights or like happy hours and dinners where we're getting people together. And I do think that we are permanently living in this post-COVID world. And the way in which I used to like hang out with people, pre-COVID, it's just very different. Work culture, post-work culture, very different. People working from home. And so I believe that we'll continue to see more and more communities popping up. I think that's a great thing for humans overall. And Summit has a very specific type of person that fits really well in our community. And we want to serve those members. We want to connect those members. We want to learn more and more about the opportunities and challenges people are working on and figure out, how we can connect people and collaborate to help make those things happen. And that's what I'm excited. I'm excited about building the next few years.
Amazing. Well, Chris, first off, thank you for joining us. We talked, before this, we can chat all day about, the different things we're working on. So we're definitely going to have you back on the
Cool.
show in the near future. And yeah, thank you, for following this journey that it sounds like you sort of go with the flow, but also you take that initiative at the same time. And to anyone who's listening, maybe this is a little bit of a call. As much as we appreciate you listening and watching on your phone, put down your computer, put down your phone, book a trip, or attend a local networking conference in your city. And you never know when it can, years down the line, lead to the conversation that we're having today. It really is a beautiful thing. And then last question actually for you, Chris, how can our listeners, our viewers, our supporters check out more about Summit and Summit at Sea?
Yeah, just go to summit.co. And there's a lot of information about Summit at Sea. You can apply online. We go through every application. There's a qualification process. We interview every person to make sure they're fit for the community. But we love, connecting with as many people as possible. So summit.co is the best starting spot.
All right. Well, I know we've got a lot of founders, a lot of leaders, a lot of world travelers who tune into this show. Clearly, it sounds like this is an amazing opportunity to, meet new friends, get new ideas, get inspired. We will make sure that the website for that is linked in the instructions or the summary of the podcast. And yeah, let's hopefully all run into each other out at sea and get inspired and support each other. So Chris, thank you for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Dylan, thanks for having me. Looking forward to seeing you on the ship.
Can't wait. And to everyone who supports the show, as always, we appreciate it. Our goal is to bring, global leaders like Chris to share what they're working on, to get us inspired. So appreciate you supporting the show, but get out there and live life and experience it. Go check out Summit, go book that trip and get inspired. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Intelligence Report. Thank you very much. Perfect. What'd you think?